Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Plenty to talk about, and I'll get to that momentarily. Let me just post a photograph that Calestus Juma, who's a professor at Harvard, posted. These fishermen outside my house offered to sell me their evening catch, and it's just such a great photograph. I like this tweet from Yashar, perfect example. Emily, a former Daphne Sheldrick orphan, came back to show the new baby she had had with a wild elephant. And it's a remarkable place, the Daphne Sheldrick Centre. If you do get a chance, do go pay a visit. Champagne bars are booming, apparently, and I just liked the oysters. All the snapshots which our children would look at someday with wonder, thinking their parents had lived smooth, well-ordered lives. Jack Kerouac. B-25s fly past erupting Vesuvius, Italy, 1944. Pretty dramatic photograph. And then Manchester United, whom I support. Take a look at this tweet. Political reflections. Kenya opposition leader Raila Odinga spoke to a crowd of supporters in the Mathare area of Nairobi. This photo is by Ben Curtis of Associated Press. And you can see there was an enormous crowd. He said, "This is a failed regime that is resorting to killing people instead of addressing the real issue. The vote was stolen," Mr. Odinga said, from a stage as onlookers scrambled from packed streets onto roofs, cars and tree branches to get a better view. "We are not done yet. We will not give up. For now, I want to tell you, don't go to work tomorrow." That's today. But it seems as if that call has not been heeded entirely. Mr. Odinga again offered no concrete evidence for his claim that the election had been rigged in favour of Mr. Kenyatta, who, according to Kenya's IEBC, received 54.3% of the vote compared with 44.7% for Mr. Odinga. Election observers from the European Union and the African Union have said the vote was free and fair, and there was no evidence of widespread manipulation or the hacking of vote tallies claimed by the opposition. "Wait for the next course of action, which I will announce the day after tomorrow," he told his supporters who called him Baba or Dad. It may be tough for even Mr. Odinga's most ardent supporters to stay away from work. Many residents from Nairobi's poorest pockets were already back at work Sunday, after missing nearly a week's living since voting on Tuesday. "I want to do what Baba says, but I have to feed my children too," said Mercy Ochieng, who runs a stall that sells food and refreshments in Mathare. Still, she closed her stall for a few minutes to try to catch Mr. Odinga speak in her community. "I'll just go to see him quickly," she said. "I'm so happy he came to us." And my conclusions are an article, firstly by Joe Adama, and then I'll read you my article, which is "The Saddest Statement of Raila's Long Career." A fraud, a shame, a fiction, unacceptable. These were among the strong words former Prime Minister Raila Odinga used in rejecting the provisional results of the 12th general election as declared by the IEBC on Wednesday, July the 9th. The event was a press briefing by NASA at the prestigious ABC place Westlands, in which the principals tabled a 52-page statement that shocked many observers, not so much for what it alleged, but for the fact that it was raw copy, totally unedited. It alleged the grossest electoral crimes, the hacking and takeover of the IEBC server, and falsification of the entire general election outcomes at all 6 electoral levels: presidential, gubernatorial, parliamentary, senatorial, the county assemblies, and women representative. These are the gravest charges ever made in the history of Kenyan electioneering, but instead of being made cogently, rationally, and grammatically, by a campaign that had sophisticated electoral and data mining local and international consultants. It was the work of a barely literate drafter. The press statement rejecting the provisional presidential results was titled in all caps, National Super Alliance. NASA Presidential Campaign Secretariat briefing on the 2017 presidential election, we got them. It was supposed to be the most important public statement of Raila Odinga's political career, short of a presidential inaugural address. But it was conceived and written in a frenzied hurry. It was what the newsrooms call raw copy. It had no editorial intervention. It was full of broken English, misspellings, spoonerisms, and malapropisms. On page 7, we find the following paragraph. We have uncovered the fraud. Uhuru must go home. The IEBC must be fully accountable. The will of the people is unstoppable. We had a superior one in the clouds. That last sentence refers a server that is better than the IEBC's. It is also a reference to the cloud. This is very sad indeed. All three technical terms in capital letters are misspelt. The recursive should be recursive, the quoted should be quoted, and the roundabout should be roundabout. It is useless to argue that the statement was issued at a time of high stress and as a matter of national emergency. This is all the more reason it ought to have been edited for grammar, punctuation, and correct spelling. Mangling of English unworthy of the big-name consultants at NASA's service, and this is a very valid point, which is why the market was very quick to see the accusation of massive hacking as a red herring, as I told Bloomberg Quint. And essentially there is no smoking gun, and hence the positive market reaction. The equity market surged, Eurobond yields fell by the most in the year. And this took me to my piece over the weekend, Finding the Off-Ramp. As the dust settles, it is crystal clear that President Kenyatta pulled off a serious political victory. The president's team outthought, outspent, and outmaneuvered the opposition at practically every turn. Mr. Musyoka's intemperate remarks that Central Province should lie low like an envelope just 24 hours before the vote surely dialed up the vote in Jubilee strongholds. Mr. Odinga's call for rent controls put every owner on notice, and I think that too was an ill-advised call and underestimated the ownership economy. There are many Kenyans today who, after years of graft, own a piece of the economy, and they surely got nervous. It is time now for the opposition to skip a generation, and this is said with humility. It is also time for the opposition to appreciate, once the trauma of losing subsides, that there are two audiences. The first audience is its own supporters. The second is everyone else. If you are going to argue the case that a cyber crime was committed, then for goodness sake, find someone who can make that argument credibly, which is what Joe Adama in the previous article was saying. In fact, the election had the potential to produce quite a bifurcated economic outcome. Kenya stands in the vanguard of free market economics in Africa. It has taken more than 50 years to establish our credentials in that regard. An Odinga administration would have taken a leftist tilt, and the markets naturally were more aligned with President Kenyatta, and hence the very positive market reaction. Stock market gained around 5% last week, and Kenya's Eurobonds had their best week in 2017. We need to build on that positive momentum to crowd local and international investors into Kenya. What we have learned is that 5 to 6% GDP growth, while better than most in Africa, after being diluted for population expansion, is not effecting meaningful trickle-down. It was this fact recharacterized as a refrain, you cannot eat GDP, which the opposition failed to leverage to their own chagrin. Therefore, we have to find a GDP off-ramp, one where the economy speeds up to 8% or more. Kenya has to dash for growth. That's a sine qua non for the next 5 years. President Kenyatta has to be St. George in his second administration and slay the corruption dragon. I recall a period in 2002 when citizens performed citizens' arrests of policemen for asking for bribes and marched them to the police station. It was a remarkable moment and shows that it is possible to do something. A big effort on this front would release at least $1 billion and more per annum and juice the GDP move towards 8%. The President needs to consider how to recapture that cathartic moment that we witnessed in 2002. Infrastructure spending like the railway were absolutely necessary if we are serious about entrenching our pivot transit state status, i.e. the route to the sea and the global markets for a number of adjacent states. Then we absolutely needed to make these big-ticket investments in the railways, the roads, and the ports. Already President Magufuli has proven a fierce competitor, and his recent oil pipeline win shows that. So these investments were necessary. Many commentators, in my opinion, have underestimated the positive economic spillover effects that will arise from these investments. Today, companies can tap into cheap power. Geothermal is one example. They can situate themselves close to the railways. They can export goods via the railway to the sea and to a 3 billion people market on our doorstep in the Indian Ocean economy, let alone the 7 billion market in the wider globe. We have a vast reservoir of good human capital that is hard-working, and these all are the magic ingredients for creating a Mekong Delta economy that becomes an accelerant. Debt is an issue, it's blinking amber. We can argue that a ratio of around 53% debt to GDP, we are comfortably within 60%, which was the Maastricht criteria for the European project, for example. But we now have run out of headroom. We will need to eat more delicately at the debt table. We will have to sequence our big dreams. We cannot do everything at once. How we manage our debt will be important in the second term. We need to aggressively interrogate return on investment so that we push those projects that have a higher and quicker ROI profile. Tactically speaking, there is an opportunity to unload more Eurobonds in the short term, but over the medium term we need to now sequence better and bite off only what we can comfortably service. We need to now also call a stop to the endless bailout, Groundhog Day rigmarole. Kenya Airways was a national interest issue. If we want to be a gateway to Africa and a hub, we absolutely needed a national airline. There was no choice around the Kenya Airways rescue. However, we now need to establish where that national interest red line lies, and companies that fall on the wrong side of that line must be left to fail. The government put option has to end. One of the most progressive elements of our economic policy over the last 15 years was the privatization policy, which saw its culmination in the sale of Safaricom shares for 5 shillings way back in 2006. We need to reignite that program. It's a silver bullet. It gets GOK out of business, it gives citizens a stake, and those who have a stake tend not to burn things down. The secret of such a program is not to milk the cow, but to ensure that citizens are sold shares at prices that give them a profit. Optimal pricing keeps the pipe flowing. There is a tsunami of cash to be tapped internationally and domestically, but never ever leave citizens nursing losses. Our economy is not a monoline economy, it is multifaceted, it has multi-dimensional promise, from the ubiquity of mobile money to the promise of the entrepreneurial spirit in every citizen's DNA. I was transfixed by the long queues of Kenyans waiting patiently to cast their votes, and then I noticed a fellow who had set up his own coffee stand, and I thought, that's my Kenya. If opportunity comes knocking, Kenyans seize it, We just need to ensure it comes knocking. Finally, I liked the tone of President Kenyatta's acceptance speech. You are indeed the president of 43 million Kenyans. The president needs to include everybody. Kisumu, for example, is about to receive a huge investment from EABL. There are plenty more investments that we can make or help others make. It's a carpe diem moment. Over to you, President Kenyatta. Meet Kim Jong-un, a moody young man with a nuclear arsenal, says the New York Times. In China, the man threatening to fire missiles at the United States is often derided as a chubby brat. In the United States, a senator recently referred to him as that crazy fat kid. President Trump once called him a total nut job. But the target of all that scorn, Kim Jong-un, the 33-year-old leader of North Korea, has long been underestimated. Mr. Kim was the youngest of 3 sons, yet leapfrogged his brothers. To succeed his father, Kim Jong-il, many analysts dismissed him as an inexperienced figurehead when he took power at 27. Smart, pragmatic, decisive, but also capricious, moody, and ready to kill easily. Saying that on his 8th birthday, Kim Jong-un was given a general's uniform as a gift. And from then on, generals paid their respects to him by bowing before him, according to his aunt, Kok Yong-suk, who defected to the United States in 1998. He moved quickly and ruthlessly. I think most people did not expect a man so young to be so proficient at managing his dictatorship. He's been proficient, hasn't he? Trump threatens war, Tillerson promises no regime change, which is an interesting dichotomy, and we're seeing it again with Mattis. I like this from David Yarrow. The opportunities for fresh content in the hinterland of North Korea are boundless, and this smelter was a case in point. He said, Korea's KOSPI 200 volatility index eased slightly Monday, though still remains well above the 12-month average. A very forceful cover, French newspaper Libération today, Charlottesville, the White House. America shocked as president elected by white supremacists failed to condemn them. This is PD Costa. Victim of this attack, ID'd as Heather Heyer, whose last Facebook post said, if you're not outraged, you're not paying attention. And Joe Biden says there's only one side, and I think he's correct. Britons should be given a second Brexit vote, says David Miliband. I think he's correct. US 10-year Treasury yield has really come much lower. Take a look at this chart from Holger. Bitcoin has soared past $4,000 for the first time. You will recall 30th December 2016, I made Bitcoin my conviction trade for the year. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro dollar 118.22, dollar index below 93.50 at 93.19 last. Japanese yen 109.57, Swiss franc 0.9654, the pound 130.05. The Australian dollar is at 0.7882, India rupee 64.025, South Korean won 1139.68, the Rial 319.30, Egyptian pound 17.792, and the Rand 13.4272. Dollar index put up a 3-month chart, but we're back below this key level of 93.50. Japan's second quarter GDP was up 4% on an annualized basis, beating estimates by a wide margin. Didn't help the yen though, which softened up to 109.56. But have a look at this graph from Triple Leverage, who's quite bullish about the yen. Commodity markets, very clearly defined channel in oil. We're currently at $48.84 trading. I'm still looking for a break lower. Gold has surged to its highest level since early June, but it's come off a little bit. It's at 1285.45. But obviously, that's a geopolitical play. The level of uncertainty in the world is sky high. Emerging markets, the Russians are catching Venezuela at rock bottom, said one Western diplomat. Venezuela's unraveling socialist government is increasingly turning to ally Russia for the cash and credit it needs to survive, and offering prized state-owned oil assets in return. Sources familiar with the negotiations have told Reuters. Caracas struggles to contain an economic meltdown and violent street protests. Moscow is using its position as Venezuela's lender of last resort to gain more control over the OPEC nation's crude reserves. It's an interesting play, worth having a look at. 17 killed, 8 wounded in attack on Burkina Faso restaurant. This was early this morning. South African oil shares up 8.89% so far this year. Dollar versus rand, last time I checked, 13.4272, so it's right at the top of the trading range. Nigeria's Buhari feels ready to go home, awaiting doctors okay. This is a report at Reuters. Nigerian oil shares up an eye-popping 42.14% so far this year. Ghana Stock Exchange is up 34.47% so far this year. Kenya, from our findings, we didn't find anything that was deliberately manipulated. This is ELOG. Many people said they would not protest until Mr. Odinga told them what to do. Why doesn't he speak? Why doesn't he tell us what to do? That was a report that was filed prior to his visit to Mathare and Kibera. International observers and diplomats have urged Mr. Odinga and NASA to address their grievances through legal channels. On Saturday, James Orengo, a senior NASA official, said filing a legal challenge was out of the agenda. He declined to say what the coalition would do, but said it had a cocktail of constitutional alternatives without giving details. Put up some photographs of Raila Odinga in Kibera. Take a look at that crowd, pretty enormous. He said tomorrow there's no going to work. James Orengo said at the rally that the alliance is considering calling for mass action without elaborating. I tend to think this was, as does Shailja Patel, that this was an unbelievably callous exploitation of NASA's grassroots followers as pawns in negotiation for state benefits and spoils of office. And I went back to King Lear, as flies to wanton boys are we to the gods, they kill us for their sport. And this is maintaining the strategy of tension. We are not done yet, we will not give up, Raila Odinga said, and he's set to announce his new strategy on Tuesday. Kenya's elections show how the media sold its soul, is an article by Gathara in the Washington Post. Kenya's opposition accused the police of killing 100. The police is talking of something between 11 and about 30. Kenya's opposition accused the security forces on Saturday of killing more than 100 people, including children, in a crackdown on post-election unrest. The party did not offer any proof, which has been par for the course, and Reuters has not been able to confirm 11 deaths nationwide. They displayed handfuls of spent cartridges at a briefing and said there was a shoot-to-kill policy against their supporters, whose corpses are being taken away in body bags, apparently. David Ndii, who's the economic spokesperson, said this is a revolutionary moment. Stanbic has reported first half earnings per share declined 12.2%, loans and advances expanded 8%, profit before tax was down 30.883%, profit after tax was down 12.112%, EPS declined 12.2%, the interim dividend of $1.25, down 29.379%. I thought these were a solid set of results, especially in the context of the new interest rate regime. Equity Bank closed at a 2017 high on Friday. That's posted a 49.166% return so far this year. KCB at a 2017 high. That's posted a 61.739% return year to date. Safaricom, a smidgen off a record, up 33% year to date. Kengen closed at a 2017 high. That's up 59.48% year to date. Uchumi closed at a 2017 high. That's up 6.329%. Nairobi all shares surged 1.39%. It's up 23.74% year to date, and at a 27-month high. And the NSE 20 is up 24.82% year to date, and at 15-month highs. I'll leave you with a fish trader who opened her business for the first time since election day, bang in the middle between the police and protesters in Condé Lake in Suva. That photograph was from Emmanuel Gunza of the BBC. So overall, I think, we're going to see some calming down. I think this was one all ends up, as I said, and that, currently the opposition does not have a strategy as to how to deal with the situation. Once again, I appreciate the fact that you stopped by.